How's it going, internets? I hope you're having a lovely day. It's that time again. It's time to get into some animation. It's time to get that imagination activated, get into some creativity, and time to get inspired. So today's inspiration comes from Tim Vigil. If you're not familiar with his work, check right over here. He is a beautiful artist, probably best known for the horror genre, but he's done some great work, and I'm a huge fan of his as well. So definitely check out more. I will throw some links in the description below, but I just wanted to show you some of his draftsmanship. I think it's really, really top notch. I love these characters that he comes up with, and like I said, his anatomy's on point. Great composition here. And you've got these so much detail focused here, and then you've got a little bit slower down on the outsides here, so you really focus in on the main detail of the face and this character here. And again, you've got that nice line of action thrown throughout, the tip of the boat's pointing back, and it's just really blended well throughout. Another beautiful piece. This one reminds me of a little bit of what I would think maybe Gustave Doré would do in today's digital or current age. I think he would do something like this, and I think it's just great. Again, stunning anatomy and really creative and imaginative, and great layout here. Just real nice inking, beautiful inking lines, and again some Conan. You gotta always throw in some Conan if I can there. And this one I thought was just really great as well. But I wanted to share a quote with you guys, and this one's a little different than some of the ones that we looked at before. And this is from an interview that he did, and he said, "I like individual characters. It shows in my personality. I'm not good in crowds and avoid groups a lot, yet eye the movement and action of others from afar and cast judgment. Yes, I live in a fantasy world in my mind. Yes, I know, but the voices in my head sing so well together." And I thought that was a great quote. There's this tendency with creative people that you swing either one way or the other. There's lots of people that I know who are really, really super outgoing, and they go to all the conventions and they meet all the different people, and they are just sharing their work here and there. They have like 8,000 friends. They're always verbal. And then there's the other side of the creative people, and those are the ones that I usually find myself more in line with, and the people who you go out and you just observe, and you look through and you break down and you try and understand why that person's standing the way they are, or holding that thing in the way they are, or you try and listen to the nuances in their voice while they're talking, and just go out and observe, and you soak up all this stuff. And it's not that you're maybe it's a little bit of avoiding groups, but I think it's for myself at least, it's more about trying to soak in as much as I can of everything around me, and interpret it and think of it. I have this thing that I'm kind of playing around with, that I do on Instagram when I remember to upload over to Instagram. Too many things these days. That's take a picture and then try and find something in that picture that isn't real, that I can accentuate and bring to life. So check out over there at Instagram if you want to see that. But I think it's kind of that same way with creative people. You usually swing one way to the other, and we've talked about this with other people, talking about how they don't want to lose the whimsy of their childhood, or they always want to keep that creative side alive. And he talks about that as well, of the fantasy world in your mind. And I think people who are really really creative and really think differently do, I wouldn't say it's a fantasy world, but it's a world that allows the imagination to run wild. And that doesn't mean that you're let it affect the parts of you that you have to take care of business or whatever it is for regular life, but you let your mind be okay with thinking thoughts that are bizarre and weird, and embracing that and trying to figure out how that can work. So that being said, let's go ahead and get into some animation for the day. This is the Fuzzy Rig. It's a free rig you can grab over at Creative Crash. And if you're not familiar with what we'll be doing for the rest of the video, we give ourselves 48 frames. It's 2 seconds of animation. And go off and I find a rig that I've never used before. It's a free resource for you guys to play around with. and we kind of go from there. A little bit of over the shoulder, hang out with me while I animate, a little bit of talking through the process. But most of all, the main goal of doing these videos each and every day is to hopefully encourage you guys and inspire you guys to go off and create your own stuff. Whether it's because you learned something here, or we brought up a subject, or talked about something interesting, or looked at some beautiful artwork, or because you disagree with me, or you don't like it, or whatever, but just so that it's a reminder for you guys to embrace that imagination and that creative spirit and to go off and do something of your own. And if you do, feel free to share it down in the comment section as well. I'd love to give you some thumbs up and some encouragement as well. So that being said, let's go ahead and play around here. Now, one thing, if you do end up using this rig, it's a little off-centered and a little lower than it should be. But instead of bringing the rig up, I'm just going to bring the floor plane down. Now, what I was thinking for this one is do kind of a vanilla-ish walk with some fun arms. So let's make sure those feet are still planted, and then we can grab that. And I'm going to actually... pull this down a little bit more. If we can do, I just want to be able to grab those feet controllers. And let's start with a more interesting pose. Let's go ahead and make sure we just have nerve curves, nerve surfaces, and polygons selected so we don't key anything we don't need to. Let's go ahead and puff out the chest. Offset the hips. Tilt the head up a little bit. Eyes up here. This looks like almost a stylized, like one of the kind of, I think it's DreamWorks, I'm spacing, the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs kind of stylizing in this character. I thought that was an aesthetic that I definitely like. Switch the hands to FK. Usually when I'm doing a walk, unless I have them holding something specific or want to hit a specific acting moment, I usually like doing the arms in FK because then you get some basic movement from the movement of the body. And if you're just doing kind of a walk, then I find that's a good way to get yourself some basic animation right away if you animate the hips and the chest correctly. And then you can add your character and your overlaps and all that stuff later, rather than having to go through and do kind of everything right on ones or twos like you would in IK. And a little tilt there. And let's see. Back there. Down there. Forward a little bit. Keep forgetting that these controllers are not the ones I want to use. I use these ones up here. Like I said, we're just kind of going to do a little bit vanilla-ish, but with some character in there for sure. Feeling a little kind of Pee Wee Herman-ish today with this guy. So let's see if we can't do something fun like that. Here. And here as well. We just want to create a good, interesting pose to start with here. And pull that back up here. And let's add just a little curvature to side here. And we're just going to grab everything and add a little bit of curvature here and bring the bases back up a little bit. Okay, I think we'll start there. We'll definitely do some more tweaking, but I really want to work on the timing for this one. I think that's important for the idea that I have in mind. So let's set our frame range from 0 to 48. Let's go ahead and save our file. Remember, it's always good to save multiple versions and to save often. And just in case I haven't mentioned it yet, we are using Autodesk Maya 2014 for today's video. And as always, there is a link in the description for more information on that. And let's go ahead and just grab everything. Again, make sure we only have our nerve curves, nerve surfaces, and polygons selected so we don't key any geometry or anything. And let's go ahead and set that first key. And let's go ahead and build the steps here. Should I cycle? Or I wasn't going to do a cycle. Maybe I want to. No, I think I'll do actual move here. I'll go 24, bring it forward, grab the hips, pull those forward. Just kind of building the foundation for this walk. Not quite there at all, but I want to get the feet and the hips locked in first. Then once we got those working, then we can start playing around with some other stuff here. Okay. I think I want to tweak some stuff. I decided I want to do some bigger steps as I'm going there. Let's start off here. And let's make sure our spacing between our steps feels about right. This one will probably be a little bit further. So they're just kind of kissing the other side there from this angle. So this one would be a little bit further here. And what I mean by that is there's still some overlap, but just a little bit, at least from this angle. Kind of give ourselves a good point to eyeball so we get our spacing fairly even without having to actually go in there and really lock it in on each value here. Because we do want some variation. So that it's not all, 10 points of value forward, 10 points of value back. Here, let's bring this one back just a little bit. Bring the hips back a little bit here. So let's go into our graph editor. This is the translate Z, which would be in this case, the right to left movement. And we're going to make that a little more even here. As you see, we're kind of slowing out of that first position, not really even there, and then slowing into that last one. And we want to make this a constant for our idea today. So let's adjust that. Look at this now. Okay, feels all right. No, and we don't want these feet to just slide everywhere, so let's go ahead and lock in the main positions again. So we're just going to go in and take all those main keys and just hit S on our keyboard again, so we make sure all of the attributes are keyed. So we don't get any funky stuff later. We want that foot to be there. And so let's go in at 6 and let's go ahead and raise that up. Now as you can see, we need to grab these knee controllers here, which hopefully these are. Let's go ahead and crank them forward and just leave them there. side. I'll raise that foot up. And raise that foot up. Let's see. Can probably have a little bit more poppy knees than usual because we got some straight legs going. I feel like straight legs are important for the feel that I want for this walk rather than super smooth. So maybe we'll have a little bit of poppiness in it every once in a while. That's okay. And I think also the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to push the foot out in X. Not both of them here. Let's make sure I didn't. So let's take just this foot and let's swing it out in X. So it'll not only go up, but it'll go out and then back. And then out and then back. Like I said, we're doing fairly vanilla, but then we'll add some, call this more of a personality walk. But I like to keep it fairly vanilla to begin with and get the main bits built in and then exaggerate what I want to exaggerate or simplify what I want to simplify. So let's see that now. Okay, let's save our file, and let's grab both of those, and let's kind of compare the translate Y's, make sure those are fairly even, and our translate X's, that we go a fairly equivalent amount here and there. Doesn't need to be exact, but we're not having one side that's really swinging out and the other side that's really swinging back, so something more like that. And again, you want to have some variation. You don't want your animation to feel really robotic by going in and being like 0.008, 0.0087. You know, let yourself be a little carefree with that stuff. So let's go ahead and push our hips a little bit over that way, and push our hips a little bit over that way, and again over here. Just so that we get the weight shifted over the planted foot. And zero that out again. Now let's take a look at that. Make sure we got some fairly balanced weight translations here. Okay. And now let's do a little bit of rotation in the hips to favor that as well. So that we get the weight over here, and we've got it lifted up here as that foot would be lifted. Again, the other side there. And I definitely would encourage you guys, if you're beginning animators or just learning, I think there's kind of what I would say is a fairly, at least for myself, and maybe you guys are different, but a fairly common, I think, hindrance to when you're learning animation. A lot of things will tell you, just animate to camera, set a camera, lock a camera in, and then animate to that one, which is important, but for learning, I think you want to work in 360 degrees, have an open camera, just make sure things are working, make sure they feel natural from, you know, this side, from that side, from up, from down. You want to figure out as much as you can that, you know, your weights, shifts are there, your timing's there, and then as far as like the two camera stuff, that's really for once your shot's really working, and if you want to accentuate some stuff or really play it up, then do that. So I personally, when I like to work, I find that it's better to not really decide on a camera where other people probably would. But again, this is more for learning and growing as an animator rather than for what you might want to put on screen. You know, if it's a movie shot that you want, you really want to make sure that your animation is as powerful as it can be towards the camera. But if you're just learning and trying to understand the principles and grow and push your animation, I think a lot of times, especially people when they're just figuring stuff out, worry too much about camera and render settings and all of that kind of stuff. And if you want to be an animator and study animation, just worry about the animation. The rest of the stuff Usually, if you're in a larger studio, someone else is gonna take care of. And it doesn't mean that don't learn that stuff at all, but you got to figure out what's important to you, and if what's important to you is, rendering and making it look awesome, then study that. But if animation is the thing that's important to you, then just focus on the animation. It's okay if your lighting isn't perfect or your rendering isn't perfect or any of that stuff. If the movement's there, that's what you're trying to learn as an animator, and your storytelling ability and your timing and all that stuff. So, all right. Now, the other thing I want to do is get a little bit up and down. I don't think I'm going to worry too much about the up and down here on the hips, but I still want to get a little bit in there. It does kind of feel like it's the translate Y is a little bit sensitive here, so maybe I was just goofing around in the beginning. It feels okay now. And again, with keeping the straight leg that we want, it's important that we don't do too much up and down, too much down, I guess. But I'm not going to worry too much about that as we're still going through, although knee pops do distract me a lot. Alright, get that a little bit up and down here. Now, the last thing we really want to do with the hips is rotate to favor the front planted foot, the leading foot here. And then all this stuff we can offset in the chest later on as well. So let's see. Okay, and let's clean up our rotate Y's a little bit more so we make sure that we're not favoring one side, which it appears like we are. All the values are favoring the top rather than the bottom, so let's try and even that out a little bit more. And I think probably minimize it a little bit too. Scale it back a little bit. So let's look at that. Okay. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to do some stuff with the arms. So and let's go ahead and swing it back, forward, and back, forward. And same here. Where normally the arms would work differently, I want to do more of a beat where they're acting the same rather than a little more groovy, I think. Now, one thing I do want to do too is on the passing positions, I want them to swing out. So it would be swing out and then swing in, and then swing out and swing in. And we can overlap this in the forearm as well. Out, in, out, and then in again. So let's see. Okay. And let's try and even up those in and outs a little bit more. And again, this is more of kind of a, this wouldn't be how you would typically walk. This would be more of a stylized or funky little happy walk or silly walk. Okay, again, we want to go to the other side. I want to pull those arms out and push them in and pull them out and push them in and pull them out and push them in, pull them out and push them in. Let's see. Okay, now let's go to the forearms here. Let's go out there, in there, out there. And we might delay this about 2 frames. frames as well. Out, in, out, and in. Let's go and look at that now. Okay, I think the outs might be a little too much, so let's scale those back. And I think we get our variation more with our timing than a little bit by delaying it a frame or two, rather than really over-exaggerating it, because there's a lot of movement going on right now. So let's delay it a frame, and then see if we want to go one more. Let's go 2 frames. Usually you can feel 2 frames a little bit better than one. And then when we get into the wrists, that should help us as well. So again, let's go pull them out there. And swing them in. Pull them out. And swing them in. Pull them out. Swing them in. Swing them out. And swing them in. So let's see. And let's go 3 frames later on this. So I'm going to swing in further here. And let's see that. There we go. It's nice and loose on those hands. And maybe we'll do the same with the forearms. Maybe we need to go 1 frame later. And that would mean we need to go in a little bit more there. And let's see that. There we go. It's a lot looser now. I think I'm gonna accentuate the up and down. I was gonna make it minimal, but I think I'll go ahead and exaggerate the down and up here. Maybe even more. Let's go and just crank that guy. Okay, and let's go ahead and get into doing some chest animation here. So let's grab all of the sections of chest. Usually I don't do the arms till after I've done the chest, but felt like that was kind of a key part of this shot, was to get those arms moving correctly and get the kind of timing there. I was going to do a double move on there, but I think this is busy enough. Let's zero that out. Okay, so let's go ahead and see that now. Okay, and let's kind of even that out a little bit more. Pretty close though. And let's do a little bit of rotate Y here. Favor that side there, that side there, that side there, that side there, and that side. So let's go ahead and see that. And I feel like that's probably going to be over exaggerated and it's unbalanced. So I only want a little bit of this, and obviously I just did a first rough pass. It's definitely favoring what's that, probably the right side of the left there. Let's go ahead and see that now. Give that a little bit of twist in there. Another thing we could probably do to amp that up, we need to get fingers in there, and we need to do some toes. And then I think I want to do a little bit more straightening of the chest on the passing or middle position here. So let's start off by looking at the hips. Forward there, back there, or back there and forward. And I'm not sure how much of this I want to do, but it'll add to the up and down as well if we can get enough in there. I always like to keep this stuff pretty pretty tight. I don't like too much variation in there because I don't want the kind of get a weird wibble wobble effect if you don't really keep this tightened. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but we just want to keep a pretty even keel to that. And let's go ahead and again, just going to kind of straighten out there and push it forward, straighten out there a little bit, push it back, straighten out there, push it back. Okay, and now let's look at the just the rotate X's here. And again, we want to keep these pretty close to what we started with and just add some variation there. And again, as you can see, I never really go in here and do the values there. Just play around in the graph editor. Every once in a while, if you're trying to get a transition from like a pose and you really need to get it on ones and it's just not going, then I'll probably go in and really key in an actual value in the attribute editor. But for the most part, I usually do most of this stuff in the graph editor. I think we could even amp that up a bit more. So let's go ahead and grab the rotate X. Let's just crank that a little bit more. Especially from this angle, which I think I want to play to. It's like the forward angle. We could definitely exaggerate that a little bit more. So let's see it now. There you go. Get a nice bounce in the chest there. And probably a little bit of, do a little bit of that kind of pigeony neck, I guess it would be. Rotate the head out, back, out there, back, out there, back, out there, back. And let's do the head as well. Kind of a funky neck from this angle, but from straight on, usually it's looking pretty good. So we'll see. And this is probably way too much movement and not very clear. So, and we've reversed it somewhere in there too. So let's clean that guy up. Should add some floppiness into the head and neck there too. So let's go ahead and see that now. And let's accentuate the tip forward there a little bit more. And let's look at that now. Too much. So maybe we'll scale it back a little bit more. There's a lot of stuff going, so we don't need the head doing too much, but we can add a little bit of bounciness to it. Okay, go ahead and save that, and let's do some fingers here. Let's go 3, and we'll swing it that way. Too much, so we can always scale it back. And that's a good rule that I try to bring up often is feel free to exaggerate and pull back. It seems to be a lot easier than to continue trying to push a little bit of movement until you can see it. It's usually a good rule to kind go by. I feel like these swing forwards are probably too much, so maybe we'll do less of that. That should feel a little better. Okay, and let's look at the other side here. And again, we want to go here and drag them that way. Swing them out. Drag them that way. Swing them out. There's something kind of funky with this pose right about here. Maybe it was just a weird angle or something that I was having, but it looked like there's some intersection there. So I could check that out too. Let's go and see that now. Maybe a little too much on this side. So let's go ahead and scale it back a little bit more. Let's go and see that now. Okay, and let's do some thumb as well. So the thumb reach, go forward there, and then go back there. This might be too much. Let's see how we want to do that. I feel like we'll just do it every other one instead of being super bouncy up here. So let's see. It's too much. It's just too much. Let's go back to the original timing where we had, so we get that drag there. Just key that, key that, key that, and then key that, and we'll just kind of mimic what we already set up there a little bit. And again, we don't need a lot of this. It's just kind of to loosen up the hand a little bit more. Get some movement on that thumb. Okay, I feel like that works enough. It doesn't have to be amazing thumb animation, but just so we get some movement there, so it doesn't feel like the rest of the fingers are going and it doesn't have anywhere to go. I'm pretty sure that I did not approach that correctly, so let's get that a little bit better. Let's see. That feels fine. I think I want to do a blink on here and do a little bit of toes and maybe a little bit on the chin as well. But let's get the toes locked in first. Before we go anywhere else, let's go ahead and save our file. And what would be cool is if they had a toe swing. I got a toe. That's what I want to do. I'm going to do toe break. Suspend. Whoa. That's funky. Let's not do that. I'm sure that could be a fun thing to really get in and let's make sure we're zeroing that out. Get our ball roll there. Let's slap it down here. Our ball roll there. Lift it up and slap it down. And again, I'll probably did a little too much of that, so we'll scale it back a little bit. We've already got so much going on. In this one, we don't need a ton of that to loosen up our animation. It already feels pretty loose here. So let's go ahead and do that and lift that out. Okay, so let's go ahead and watch that now. Actually feels like we didn't do enough now. With everything else, I want to feel that slap. So we could do either more of it, or we could do it quicker, but I think I don't want it to be too much there. Okay, let's go ahead and save that, and let's see if we can get a blink working in here. Do we have a eyelid? Let's see. It's a brow, but what is this? Okay, that's a squash on an eye. We don't actually have a lid. That's frustrating. Gonna say, with all the crazy controllers in here, they have to have an eyelid. It's just over here. Great. So let's go ahead and key that, and go here, key that, and we'll go ahead and close our eyelids there. But let's go ahead and do. I usually try to do the top eyelid usually goes down with only a little bit of up in the bottom eyelid, so I always want to close more like that. It feels more natural than doing a split right along the middle. And then we'll go back to something like that, and then to something like that. Okay, so let's go and see that. Okay, let's go ahead and hold that for at least 2 frames. We can probably even go 3, so that close really registers. And other thing too is I want to do a little bit of close on the top of the eyelid here, so we have somewhere to overshoot here, so we can really open it there. And let's hold 2 till about 11, so we get a little bit of movement in the eyelid there, then it overshoots up, closes, goes up again, and then rests to about there. Let's go ahead and look at that now. And then let's do a little bit on the jaw here. Let's go ahead and okay. Looks like all we have is just a translate and a rotate there. It's okay. So let's go. That's a little sensitive there. Let's go ahead and drag it a little bit there. And I'm just gonna go through here and do key select on each of these, so I can lock one in where I want my keys, and then I'll do the setting up of where they are in the graph editor, because this one's a little sensitive here. Okay. fun rig. This one's probably, with the way that it's able to be manipulated, probably in my top 10 of favorite free rigs out there. So definitely try out this one if you guys get a chance. I think this one's a really good one. So let's take a look back at where we started. We were looking at the beautiful work of Tim Vigil, and he said, I like individual characters. It shows in my personality. I'm not good in crowds and avoid groups a lot, yet I have the movement and actions of others from afar and cast judgment. Yes, I live in a fantasy world in my mind. Yes, I know. But the voices in my head sing so well together. And one thing I did want to touch on that I don't think I mentioned at the beginning was kind of the context of this. Was talking about like what characters would he love to draw or portray or work on, like a Batman or a Superman or that kind of a thing. And he talks about how he is more interested in creating his own characters and being an individual even more so than just an individual's take on a already established character. And I think that's a good point that I didn't really mention in the beginning. And I think it's don't sell yourself short. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're only reaching 5 or 10 people. If you can use the ideas that you come up with, you're presenting something new in the world, and you're not just the more you draw a Batman or a Superman or and I love those characters. I love DC. I love Marvel too, but it's a whole other video. But you're hyping up these already known quantities and characters, and yes, you can definitely add your own spin to them and make them your own. But if you can create your own characters and your own style and your own stuff, then you're bringing something new to the world. And I think that's the most important part, not just a take on something that someone else invented, but try and think for yourself and be an individual and be unique and push yourself. And don't worry if it hasn't happened for you yet or you're not there yet. Just be on your journey. Some people don't really get noticed or known till they're in their 50s or 60s, so chances are you've got a few years till then. And if not, then if you're 50 or 60, you're awesome too, and chances are you've done some amazing stuff with your life. So I love you guys lots. I'm rambling at this point, so I think that'll do it for today's video. If you're watching this, you are the creative future. I totally believe in you. Keep on pushing yourself and keep on trying each and every day. Find out what it is that you're passionate about and never give up. And don't let anyone or anything stand in your way. Always follow your dreams. And I love you guys lots. I think that'll do it for today. So we will see you for some more animation tomorrow.